at Rask Group, you would touch hundreds of thousands of Australians each month. And so you have some pretty unique insights when it comes to what everyday Australian investors are facing and what they're challenged with and where they turn to advice for help. So give us a sense of how the average Australian investor is going, and particularly when it comes to advice and advisors, what are you hearing from them?
I think that increasingly people in our community, which is more of a DIY self-starter kind of community, similar to your own, people don't want to commit everything at the outset, which advisors listening to this would be familiar, but typically ongoing service arrangements, which is the either a percentage or the monthly fee or quarterly fee that you pay, kicks in once the statement of advice is signed. So you pay, say, $5,000, $10,000, whatever the case may be, for a statement of advice. And then you've got this ongoing kind of percentage or monthly fee. Our business doesn't do that. So our business is one fee for the whole year. You can get it in a payment plan if you want, like kind of like just break up the fee. But what we've realized is that transparency on fees, like being upfront, and this is the fee. It's not determined by the amount of assets you have. It's determined by the complexity of your situation. I think the audience really gravitates to that. And that comes back to, the way they think about investing now with ETFs, with platforms and brokerage fees. Big icon in the US is Ramit Sethi, and he talks about like not having percentage-based fees baked into things. And so wherever we can, we try and avoid that as much as possible and just bring that transparency to people. And I think for anyone in the advice community, there's kind of a cynical take that fixed fees are just percentages done in a different way with a different symbol next to them, which is fair enough. Like that, it is fair that you can do a quote, just put it in dollar signs and not percentages, and it's transparent. But that's not necessarily the case. I think what we've been able to see with our community is they love transparency. So just give that to them in your pricing, give it to them in your packages. And the good thing is, I think that we've got an opportunity to deserve the ongoing partnership, rather than kind of have it in writing, like base it on the actual impact that you have on a client and win their trust over a year. Because like I said, most of our packages for 12 months. So we have a year to prove to them that they can continue on with us after that. And you might want to ask me about this, but that's one thing that I probably over-index to, is people just want once off and then see you later. We're not a year through yet, but I would guess that somewhere between 30 and 50% want to keep the relationship, even though they don't have to, even though nothing that we do locks them in. So none of the platforms we use, none of the products we use, they can all self-manage that. And I think that's a real competitive advantage and it was fed directly from our community. They told us that's what they wanted.
What other trends are you sort of watching within your audience that are helping you build the advice business?
I think like the obvious trend is using ETFs for the basis of portfolios.
Yeah.
I think that most people know that ETFs are like a sensible way to build a portfolio. Even if it's not for everything, we know that they're not right in probably small caps, global small caps, real assets, private markets. There's so many places where ETFs and index funds are not the best solution for people. But I think if you lead with that, effectively you're doing a bit of like behavioral bias, a bit of Robert Cialdini here. You're marketing to people based on what you know that they're interested in. Yeah. And so if you lead with that, whereas if you start talking about platforms or wraps, people are a bit like, particularly right now, are a bit like, they're a bit allergic to that. Yeah. And so then if you talk about percentages on top of that, like commercially, you just don't stack up. And I think that's a real differentiator. I think one of the things that I've realized through the community too is just explain why you get to something. Like, for example, whether you use Hub24 or NetWealth, like from a consumer's point of view, they don't really care, but they will probably ask you because they want to know. So then explain to them why you chose one of those two things for your investments. And that will just give them more comfort to make a better decision. That was something that we spent a lot of time thinking about in the beginning, like myself and the advice team is like, well, what do we want to build that's in line with our brand? And then what are the tools that work for that? Not necessarily the other way around. Like unfortunately, a lot of the legacy advice profession pick tools that work for them first, and then they try and market it, which, it may make things easier in some respects, but for us, that was wrong way around.
Yeah.
So we kind of flipped that around.
Yeah.